Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Elevating Your Life. And today is going to be a great show, and we're going to elevate your life. We're going to help you elevate your children's, your grandchildren's, everyone's life today. This is going to be a really fun show. I have with us today Ken Pietraniec, and he has 30 years experience in public education, which provided him with the opportunity to spend time and understand children. He had many successful years in the classroom, as well as serving as a counselor, intervention specialist, assistant principal, dean of students, teacher, coach, and finished off his 30 years as a school librarian. Love it. His love for children went far beyond his classroom and home. His loving relationship with his grandchildren planted the seeds for him to write his book. His book, Bedtime Story for People of All Ages, is absolutely fantastic. It is just great. So first off, welcome, Ken.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here.
Good to be here.
We just happened to meet by chance and we
exchanged books.
Yes, exchanged books. And oh my gosh. And I just fell in love with the book. And I do have to say, I recently had my granddaughter and one of her best friends over, and they read it, and they absolutely loved it. So we've got the 9 and 10-year-old woohoo, which is just so fun. So first off, Ken, would you like to share any more of your background or any more of what kind of triggered you to write this awesome book?
Well, what I was involved in is pretty much 30 years of public education, but the writing goes all the way back to college. I've been writing since then and never really took it seriously for writing professionally. I always just did journals for myself, and that has served me my whole life. And then a couple of years ago, I was inspired to write a children's story about a potted plant that was outgrowing her pot. And sometimes you need to transplant the plant so that it can grow and thrive. So that's where Petunia the Potted Plant came from. And then I had so much fun writing that one with a happy ending that I had another idea about being kind feels good. So I wrote a story about Kenny, who went through his day trying to find ways to make people feel good. And what he found out was that it makes him feel good to make other people feel good. And then there's other stories in there about Gracie learning how to ride her bike. Practice makes perfect was Nora learning how to play a piano for the talent show in school. And there's one in there called Jose the Hugger, the benefits and the values of hugging, which we've lost over the last couple of years, but I think it's slowly coming back. And it's a happy life for a hugger.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, I've always said I'm a hugger, and animals, people, it doesn't matter. I'm a hugger, and it does. Hugging gives us happiness.
It's a connection. Yeah,
it is. It is. Oh my gosh. And you know, these chapters are just such fantastic, powerful messages for the kids, and really, you know, because kindness does make us feel good. I mean, that is such a wonderful thing to share with kids.
And what I discovered after I'd written 2 or 3 stories, that I had a unifying theme that I didn't even aware of when I set out to write the book. But empathy, people's feelings, experience people's feelings, turned out to be a unifying theme throughout the book. And empathy is something that at home, at school, there's never a place not to learn empathy. Mm-hmm. And it just pays off. So I've had an opportunity to go into a couple of classrooms sometimes and share the stories. For the kindergarten kids, I just read the story. But the stories are interactive. So there's questions along the way, and there's questions at the end. So it's almost a textbook for empathy that I'm hoping to get into more classrooms this fall.
Oh my gosh. Having this in the classrooms would be absolutely fantastic. It is just really a beautiful, beautiful set of words. And, you know, every theme you had, I have to say, my granddaughter's favorite was Stella Gets Kittens.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I put 3 of my granddaughters in the book. Stella Gets Kittens. Nora has to learn the song for the recital, and Gracie learns how to ride her bike. Stella Gets Kittens was, I had my son and granddaughter move in with me for a while, and they brought the cat, but the cat decided the cat didn't want to stay. So the cat didn't come back. After a day or two, you know, you do everything, you check the neighborhood, you walk around, and Stella was a bit down. So I suggested to Andy, said, why don't we get a kitten? I hadn't had animals for a while, so I said, you know, get a kitten, fill that void. So I went the old-fashioned route of checking the newspaper ads and found kittens. So Andy and Stella went and picked up 2 kittens. I thought they were going out for one, but they brought back 2. It was from the same litter. They were sisters. They were kittens. It was a wonderful experience. So that filled the void of Stella's companionship with kittens, and they moved out, but the cat stayed. So I benefited. I didn't think I was going to get attached to him, but you live with 2 kittens, bring them up from childhood. 2 years later, you're attached to them. So
You're a cat daddy.
that was the Stella Gets Kittens, and another happy ending.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And you know, the patience is a virtue. That's a great one. That's a great one, because that is a difficult thing in life sometimes.
Well, and I tried to go for universal experiences, and riding a bike, getting on a 2-wheel bike. We all remember falling down. So once again, I took pictures of the girls so that there'd be a resemblance of them in the stories for the artist who illustrated it. And Gracie falls down on her bike and skins her knee, and Dad comes up, and it goes all the way through to holding the seat on the back and then sending her on her way. And happy ending of practice makes perfect, or patience is, you said patience is a virtue. Yeah, I get those mixed up sometimes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Those Nora and Grace are sisters. So anyway, I use them for an inspiration and put them in the stories, and that was great fun in itself.
And you know what's so great about the stories also is what I felt is how the kids were drawn in, like, oh yes, I know that feeling. I've experienced that. What that can do for the kids, realizing they're not the only one to experience those things in life.
Yes. Well, again, it gets to that empathy thing, and then there's feelings, the failure and the success and the being scared, and all of those feelings that we experience in growing up.
Yes.
So you get to practice doing that, and yeah.
Oh, wow. It just really is fantastic, the variety that you chose. But I would think a lot of that came from your experience with kids, so many years. How fantastic that was.
Well, I was
to experience.
I was fortunate to stumble into public education. I didn't know I was going to get into that going into college, but coming out of college, you got to do something, and got into education, and it's the best decision I've made in my life. Professionally satisfying, personally satisfying. And you get, well, I work with middle school kids. So anyone out there who knows middle school kids or has had them, it's not an easy time in life. They're looking for somebody to listen to them. They're exploring their limits and stuff like that. So I worked with kids, and like I say, as an intervention specialist and a counselor and at-risk coordinator, I had an opportunity to listen to kids, and it's a skill you have to develop. You're not born with that. But I got good at it, and once they realize you're hearing them, they open up, and you help them get through the tough times. And middle school is a tough time for kids, tough time for parents, or not always, but often. So if you tap into the people's feelings, there's the connection.
Yeah.
And if you've got a connection, you can get a relationship. And that's what's really important, relationship and connection with people.
Yes. And it's so great to see the interaction that kids can have with you as someone that cares and can help them. plus with the other kids. And when we were chatting before the show, I mentioned in my, 30 years of restaurant work, when my children were very young, I was like, I want to be with the kids. So I remodeled my garage, opened up a daycare center, and I would do that Monday to Friday during the day, and then work nights and weekends at the restaurant. And the Fun Times Daycare, I remember one day waiting on a table, telling them about my daycare, how fun it was. And they said, really? You have a daycare? And I said, that's one of the most important jobs out there, because we are taking care of and influencing those kids. Oh my gosh, it was crafts and projects and carnivals in the summer and a Christmas play. I mean,
Fun.
it is
Fun. You tap into kids and you tap into
Yes.
fun. And kids want to share that fun. They want to have fun. So,
Yes.
and again, back to the education thing, I've always believed that learning can be fun. It's not always fun, but if you package it and present it and get the kid involved in it, there's the growing.
They're excited to do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it can be.
Yes. And I have always been so grateful to anyone in the teaching community or daycare, taking care and helping guide and raise our children. And so to you, I want to give a big heartfelt thank you.
Well,
Because that is
I've been called a saint by many
You're a
parents.
hero.
Working with middle school kids for 30 years.
yes.
It was a blessing for me, and it was just fortunate for me that I discovered I could do that. Because ultimately you want to be tapped into something that you enjoy and appreciate. And as I said, education, working with kids, it's personally
Mhm.
satisfying, it's professionally satisfying.
Yes.
And they paid me, not enough, but they paid me to do it.
And the effect and what you did for those kids, it's just beyond words.
Well, my memory, and it still pays off. I run across kids out in public now because I've always taught in this general area, and kids will yell, Mr. Pietraniec, and I'll turn around, and I knew them in middle school. Now they tell me that I haven't changed my looks much, but I say, give me a clue, give me a hint. What school was it? But yes, that connection, it's very satisfying. And again, even after retirement, the years that I put in continue to pay off. And then there's all the memories. And over 30 years, there's thousands, literally thousands of kids whose lives I've been able to interact
Yes.
with and feel good about.
And that is just priceless. That is just
Yep, it is.
priceless. I'll never forget when my youngest son began first grade. That's when I closed down my daycare. And a little girl his age who had been with my daycare for like 5 years, her parents called me a few weeks after and said, Paula, she cries herself to sleep every night. I want to go to Paula's. So we set up a little visit for her to come play. But oh my gosh, that was so.
Well, that's heartwarming. That it's
Yes,
heartfelt.
heartwarming.
It's relationship, and even the theme throughout the story is the relationship between the parents and the kids, and
Yeah.
it's important. It's important, and when you can establish that with a kid, and that's a little bit of magic. That's like holding an infant in your arms.
Mhm.
There's some magic attached to that. If you're looking
Yes.
for it, and it's there. But
Yeah,
working with
it's
kids is
just priceless.
more than worthwhile.
It is. And, you're so correct. That's, education isn't just learning the ABCs and the math. It's learning relationships. There's so much, it's such a big picture. It really is in growth and education. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Well, lifelong learning was a theme that I still propound, we're constantly learning. In school, it's easy because you've got an audience and they're all set there, but the learning that goes on outside of the classroom, if you can get them to transfer that and then open them up to, oh, I can learn this, I can do this, I can grow that, I can do that. And again, my bottom line through 30 years is self-esteem. Kids, they're developing a self-esteem. Everybody's got it. Some aren't as big or as strong as others, but if you touch that and nurture that and help that grow a little bit, that's the thing that the kid's going to take with them after they leave your presence. So that was if I had a hidden agenda for 30 years in public education, it was self-esteem.
Oh, I love that because yes, self-esteem is so much.
Oh,
And yeah, they can carry that with them. That's going to affect their whole future.
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Wow, that's just priceless.
That's good stuff. It's good stuff. Like I say, it kept me going for 30 years. I never really thought about switching gears or getting out of it, but and the benefit of from the classroom to the office, to the intervention specialist. I had a variety of jobs. I don't know that I could have done the same thing for 30 years. I don't know if that would have been challenging enough for me. I tried administration, but that wasn't my cup of tea because I missed being with the kids. But I didn't realize that until after I left them. Then I got to work with the staff, but I wasn't directly involved with the kids. So I went back into the classroom and one thing led to another. And like I say, dean of students and then intervention specialist and then the librarian. That's a good story because I was getting close to retirement. I had a couple of years. They cut back the positions of dean of students. So they had to find me something else to do. So I tried teacher coach for a while. And then they cut that position because of funding. And they needed a librarian for 2 days a week. 2 days a week. So I got to be, or maybe it was 3 days a week. Yes, anyway. So I said, they offered me this librarian position. I wasn't sure because I hadn't been trained for it, but they offered it to me. They knew that I could handle it. So I said, can I go home and think about it? Went home, I couldn't think of a reason not to be a school librarian in a middle school that I had taught at before. So I knew the staff, I knew the kids, I knew the procedures. So I got to spend my last 2 years as a school librarian and doing book talks and being there in the morning to greet them, all of those things that go with librarians that they're a different cut of cloth, but I managed it for a couple of years and it was so good that I thought about not retiring. I had a real sweet thing going there because I was there 3 days a week and then I had a helper for 2 days a week. But the time came for me to get out and do other stuff and
write this
it led to a book.
awesome book.
Yeah.
Bedtime stories for people of all ages. And it is for people of all ages.
Well, the target audience, I think, is probably about 5 to 10, where they still read these kinds of stories. And you get to 11 and 12 and they've graduated from these. But as I said, I went into a kindergarten classroom and actually read the story to them. We read aloud because when I go into the classroom with the fourth graders, we read the story aloud. I've got a class set of books, so everybody gets a copy of the book and we read out loud and we take turns and we interact. So it's a good story. It's good book stories to be read aloud, either by somebody in bed or ideally you have the adult reading to the kid. For that connection. I'm a big believer. One of my favorite quotes is a child's love for learning begins in a mother's arms.
Oh, yeah.
And I altered that for a grandmother one time. I gave her a book. But if the kids turn on to reading and associate that kind of feeling and love through books, they could become readers their whole lives, and we know how good and satisfying that can be.
My granddaughter last night, hearing her read your book was so awesome. She is so passionate right now about reading. Let me read this to you.
Oh,
Grandma.
yeah.
Let me read this to you.
That's what you want to feed. That's what you want to nurture.
Such a relationship.
And it's like we talk about lifelong learning, but lifelong reading, same thing.
And I am thinking that when you were the librarian, I can imagine because you had relationships with these kids. They were coming in and saying, Mr. Pietraniec, what should I read? What do you think I should read?
It was hard to keep up with them, and I did tap into that. The Diary of a Wimpy Kid or something like that. I was doing at that time. That was the stuff, and then these visuals. What do they call the books that have the graphic novels? They were coming out then too. So they turned me on to a whole world that's now everybody's reading them. But I was the librarian when graphic novels were first coming out. And what I found was that not only could you find these scary, monstery ones, they started coming out with the classics. The Pendulum and I'm not going to be able to remember all, but they've got the classic stories by Edgar Allan Poe and So anyway, I turned them on to the graphic novels with a story behind it too. So it was
Oh.
great. I enjoyed it. Yes, truly.
How fulfilling that must have been. I
Thought
can
about
only
staying. I
imagine.
didn't want to leave. It felt that good.
Yes.
But I put
yes.
in my 30 years and I said, there's still enough time to do other stuff. So I've gone ahead and done some other stuff.
And there is nothing like working around kids. I have to share something that just I've never forgotten in my daycare days.
Mhm.
Kids are so honest.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like a 6-year-old. And I love my music. I have my favorite songs. I dance, I sing in the car. So I listening to a song and I started singing. And I went, oh, I should have been a singer. I don't have a the great voice. And one of the kids said, no.
That's honest. That's honest.
I don't have a great singing voice. Many people do. I just love to sing.
Well, and that's the beauty of working with
It
kids.
made my day.
Yes,
It
yes,
was
yes.
adorable.
Yeah.
They're so fun, and that's priceless. And what's, so spectacular about your book is each story is really a very, very important and huge theme in our lives, from kids to adults.
Yes, well, I
Mm.
took on patience as a virtue. That's something that got passed on to me. And I don't know if that's being passed on to the next generation, so I put it into a story. Practice makes perfect. And again, the goal here was not to focus on perfection.
Mhm,
It's on
mhm.
learning and growing and learning from our mistakes and setting goals. There's another very valuable life skill, attainable goals. I believe in
Love it.
expectations, have high expectations, keep them realistic.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, those kinds of things, little messages of the kid, they might not need the patience to learn piano playing. It might not need the practice, but there's other things that they can apply those lessons to. So if they learn the lessons in life, they're going to be more likely to be able to deal with them.
Right. Apply those lessons to their particular dreams and goals.
Yeah. And encourage them to have those dreams and goals.
Mhm.
And be supportive and
just not give up, and one step at a time. And so much there. And those are core, vital success.
those are the things that you want
For us
your kids to carry
as
along
growing.
and pass along
Mhm.
and help them through life.
Yes. And really when you say as children, as we're growing up in the different levels, before junior high, high school, I mean, it's different versions of growing up. And each of these things can help us in different ways of what that entails.
Yes, there are themes that whether you're 2 or 12 or 22 or 32 or 42 or
Yes.
52 or 62,
Yes.
72, it's the lifelong learning thing. And if they can establish good thought patterns and build some self-esteem and it just makes life easier, much more enjoyable.
These can be a good reminder for someone like myself, Grammy, someone older. It can be a good reminder of that.
Yeah.
Of those things in our life.
Yes, those things that work.
Yeah, it's really a great, well-rounded book. Do you think you'll ever write a second book?
Well, the book I'm working on now is
Oh,
Bedtime Stories I was going to name it, this was Bedtime Stories for People of All Ages. So I was going to title it Bedtime Stories for Adults, but that sounded a little X-rated.
mhm.
So I changed the title to Bedtime Stories for Armchair Travelers. I have had the opportunity to travel around the world completely once.
Wow.
And visit Europe and down under. And
Mhm.
so I've been writing all of these times. So basically what I have now is a compilation of the Camino de Santiago, the walk across northern Spain. I did volunteer my way around the world one time, painting and teaching English.
Oh, fun.
That was a life experience.
Oh, I can imagine.
And then I've also been a big fan of Blue Highways by William Least Heath Moon, traveling the back roads of America. So bedtime stories for armchair travelers are for the people who love the idea of traveling, but don't actually get to do it. I
Yeah.
had a friend who suggested that title, so now I'm going to compile those 3 stories. I've got the Around the World one done. I'm 3/4 of the way with the Camino de Santiago, and then my Blue Highways I'm going to finish up this year. So, yes,
I love it. I
bedtime
love
stories for armchair travelers, and there are many of them out there who don't get
Yes.
to actually do the traveling, but they're the National Geographic readers and the travel story readers. So,
So you'll be able to help others experience those travels.
yes, without having
I
to do it.
love it,
Well,
Ken.
that's the benefit of doing these journaling all these years. I've journaled all those
Yes.
trips, so I go back to my notes, and a twist on my trip around the world one. I wrote it at the time. I wrote every day, and then what I did after I got home, 6 months after I got home later, I reflected on those experiences. So I have the daily journal entry, and then 6 months later, what does that look like? And I'm hoping that there's a little bit of wisdom that was found in between. And
Mhm.
so it's reflections. Besides the story itself, I get the reflections of what I got out of that,
Yeah,
not just at the time, but when you look back on things,
yeah.
hindsight's
Oh, I
2020.
love it. I love it. Oh my
It feels
God.
good.
We will do another interview when that book comes out.
Okay.
I will be excited to read it and to share it. Wow. With about 2 minutes left, Ken, what last words do you want to share with everybody?
Oh, geez. Help your kids in your life develop a love for reading. It opens doors. I know people who don't read much, and I know people who read a lot. And it just leads a fuller existence, a fuller life, more meaningful. And reading, it opens the door to the world.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that is precious words and very true words. Gosh, I love it. I love it. Oh, well, everyone, thank you so much for joining Ken and I today. So happy to have you with us. Ken, thank you so much. This has been so fantastic.
Thank you.
Gosh, I'm excited to share bedtime stories for people of all ages with so many. I just loved it, and have my granddaughter read more of it to me.
Yeah.
Well, love, hugs, and blessings to everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much.